It's August the 2nd, and it's a crazy day in the markets. Past performance, not indicative of future returns. I am going to share my screen right away because I have just had the most exciting. I mean, this is like the most bullish series of calls that I've listened to this morning. And it was really all energy. Even actually the industrials that I listened to were great, as well as fertilizer, which traded down initially, especially in the pre-market and aftermarket yesterday. And I just think, what's wrong with people? Do they like understand that valuation does have some limits to how much the shorts can do? And I'm going to explain that very clearly, okay? Because there's no stock that better describes what's actually going to happen if the nonsense continues than Mosaic, okay? And but before we get into that, let me do my normal stuff here. This is what the market looks like. Let me do a refresh just so you can see. This is FinViz, one of my favorite sites to just have a picture of the market. And you can see it's a bit of a mixed bag, but mostly up, even though we started the day in the red. And the indices have all traded up. And I think that's because the earnings have been really, really good. And as you guys know, there's some things that I've been very bullish on. There's almost no economic data this week that's meaningful, in my opinion, because kind of we know what it is. And I will tell you this, I've been saying this since March. I'm going to reiterate it again. There is a scenario where the United States is the net beneficiary of all of the geopolitics, and the US economy does just fine relative to a world that is actually really struggling. There's been more than one time within history that the United States has brought other countries outside, up and out of the weird stuff that's going on for them economically and geopolitically. So just realize that I wasn't sure, and I'd kind of like stopped saying that in some shows, but now I'm going to say it because I think people need to talk about it and investigate whether or not it might actually be how the world pulls itself out of this. I want to show you what's going on. We still have a ton of earnings this week. Albemarle and CEIX, two stocks that are on the raw material side, obviously Consol Energy. I have been over and over and over again that Europe is not going to be able to solve this just with liquefied natural gas. And they're certainly losing two of their major pipes. Let's just call it what it is. I mean, yeah, there's still some oil coming through the Ukraine, and there's still some, there's still some gas coming through the Ukrainian pipes, as well as Gazprom, but it's a game every single day how much they're going to get out of it. And you can't have a legit economy on that. So Consol would be the one area that the U.S. could legitimately have good rails that would take it to the water and ship it over to Europe. That's why I'm bullish Consol. And Albemarle reports, and whether reports beneficially or not, I almost don't care because we do have a lithium shortage right now. Albemarle, the biggest cap company that you can buy right now in the way of lithium that's U.S. based. There are some in Latin America, but it's a little bit of a different, I don't do Latin America for various reasons. It kind of is what it is. But Albemarle, the reason that originally I was not as positive on it 2 quarters ago was because they weren't floating to the lithium price, and now they are. So their pricing should come in really, really strong. So ALB tomorrow reports, it's run up a little bit. It is a lottery ticket bet at this point. I already have options on it from the 200, actually, strangely enough. So I just watched that one tomorrow for more details on what's going to happen. And then we still have a ton of onshore drillers to report. And let me tell you, this desire to sell the drillers because we think that the economy somehow globally is going to, like, I mean, I can't even, it's the world's dumbest argument. And it's funny because on all of these earnings calls, the companies have friendly investors typically on it, especially this S&P group of people, because the S&P group of people, people have invested in and out of these companies for like decades, not just like a few years, so people really do know the space when they're on these calls. And so even like some of the layup questions, it was really hard for management to not answer it in a way that was like not snarky, for lack of a better way to describe it, but snarky, I mean that as a compliment, because honestly, like, it's very rare that you have an executive just be like, we're going to keep doing what we're doing because there's just no more oil. Like literally, look at the transcripts and listen to FANG's call. I've not yet listened to Devon's call. They're acknowledging now openly that this is a shortage that is just a shortage. It's not, and that this is not a permanently renewable resource. At some point, there is, a limit to what you can do as relates to getting it out of the ground. and as relates to what's needed across the globe in the way of your energy usage. So I'm going to go through that in a little bit more detail. Okay, here's Mosaic first. Let's start with Mosaic. Then I'm going to do a little bit on Devon and CF, just so that you get a sense for what's going on. So Mosaic does, actually, let me do CF first, because CF is even more like out in your face about it. Okay, CF started to trade down and flat to start off the day, and now it's at 100. And honestly, it could be double that and it still would probably be fine, because the thing is trading at about 5 times enterprise value to EBITDA. And this is what the actual numbers were. So we have like a doubling of, more than doubling of sales. And then we have like almost 400%, 500% close to improvement on earnings per share. And you can kind of see there's no cheating. Gross margins actually increased. But let me show you the most important component of this. And that's this. This is the tons of products sold. So they doubled sales, are making almost 400% more in earnings with a significantly higher gross margin, but they're selling less nitrogen. And let me explain to you why they're selling less nitrogen. Nitrogen comes from nat gas, okay? So like, yes, it is the case that like there's some planting and whatever, like raw material costs, but the fact is Europe, so what happens is that this nitrogen comes from ammonia, and there's green ammonia, there's all these like different things. But the problem is that there's more than one type of demand for ammonia. So yes, it's used here, but it also happens to be used to make hydrogen energy for stuff like that. And then there's other like industrial uses of ammonia. So in Europe, the desperation for nitrogen has to be meted with like, what are the other industrial use cases and what do they make and what do they mean for our economy? So the shortage in nitrogen is real. It's not kind of a shortage. So what's happened is BNSF, which is this chemical company in Europe, is buying nitrogen from the US, buying urea from the US, because they want to reallocate the use of nat gas to other things as far as that goes. So CF is like, yeah, you know, here's the deal. We're feeling pretty good about like the next year. We recognize that the agricultural groups or the farmer made money last year, so he can certainly afford fertilizer. And we know that they're thinking price is going to go down, and they're thinking, okay, maybe this is like a temporary, or maybe they're just trying to find one-off situations. Here's what we're going to say. The price is what the price is. And we're actually making as much nitrogen as we possibly can. Doesn't make sense to make nitrogen in Europe anymore. And we're shipping it over, and that's just how it's going to be. So like, this is crazy. And then both CF and Mosaic are talking about the shortage that's happening in the way of crops, and how they're pretty sure that Latin America is absolutely going to plant and going to fertilize and try to compensate for these shortages that are happening globally in every single agricultural area, period. There's like droughts happening in the US and in India and parts of Asia that need to, and it's not like we were going into this whole weird economic environment with plenty of grain. We actually had all-time record low stores of grain. Right now we're at a 20-year low for grain storage. It's really bad. And so corn plantings are lower in the United States. That's important because one of the things that we sometimes move to when gas prices get higher is we move to biodiesels, biofuels, and this is not a good sign for that, okay? And then the demand for nitrogen for industrial use in the region continues to be led by mining activity. You know, there's like, and then urea exports from China. So China's hoarding its fertilizer for yet another year. They've already announced that they're going to do it through 2023, through the first quarter, which covers the winter planting, or the Southern Hemisphere planting season, and the beginning of when farmers would start buying fertilizer here in North America. So it's not good for anything other than, it's not good for us as the consumer on an inflation perspective, but it's really good for all the fertilizer companies, as well as for wheat, corn, and soy, which we have been maddeningly bullish on, which all traded down this morning. And that's insane. Let me just tell you. So that's CF. Now let's go to Mosaic. Mosaic sold off initially, and I was livid because, you know, it's hard for me to not like be really passionate about the things that I've researched and care a lot about. Plus Mosaic, as you guys can see from some of my other videos on YouTube, is a hometown favorite. Mosaic has a huge plant approximately in the center of the state where I grew up. Like I used to have to drive past it to get to the airport, that sort of thing, and still do. Net sales is almost a double, right? And then we've got this big FX transaction. That's the only thing that I saw that was even remotely an issue. But then when you look at earnings, it's more than 100% up from last year. It's like 150% up from last year. And here's the thing I want you guys to understand about Mosaic is the share count reduction, okay? So they said on the call, hey, we have bought back every single share that we needed to do on the fertilizante purchase in 2015. So remember when we were bullish, this was back in December at around the $36, $38 level. And there was the big spot secondary that came on that was just the rest of Vale, because they did the transaction. Fertilizantes, which is the fertilizer business for Mosaic, was purchased from Vale, which is actually a nickel producer, as well as a couple of other, like they're basically a miner. They do a bunch of stuff, but they also produce nickel and some of the things from batteries and stuff, Vale and Brazil. And basically when the shares were doing well, Vale's like, I'm going to sell back my shares in the open market and redeploy that for the other things that I know are much more core to our business. Mosaic takes down a third of that slug, and then they continue to buy it because for whatever reason, these like day traders keep wanting to sell it. And it's so stupid because now, even though the stock is up 20% as it's being reported, the valuation from that purchase price is almost half. Like I think when I was originally looking at it, it was trading at somewhere like 7 times enterprise value to EBITDA. Now it's trading at 4 times enterprise value to EBITDA, which means that like for every dollar you put in 4 years, you get that full dollar back. There's nothing that gives you a return on capital like that, a return on investment like that. So Mosaic pushed several times on the call. They're like, yeah, we're just going to buy back stock. And then people were like, well, what about this? They're like, yeah, we mean we're going to buy back stock because even after CapEx, we got plenty to buy back stock. And then people were like, what about a dividend? They're like, yeah, so like for long-term holders, we are going to eventually look at a dividend, but right here, we're going to buy back stock. And let me give you an idea of how much stock they're talking about. They had already gotten approval for that. Here, I'm going to show you on the cash flow statement. They'd already gotten approval for $1 billion buyback, and they did $500 million right away. And then they did another $500 million in this last quarter, as you can see. So now they have another $2 billion approval for a buyback. It's only an $18 billion market cap company. It's ridiculous. So they are absolutely going to buy back the entirety of the short interest if these shorts keep trying them. And it's because essentially there is no other, like this is Buffett style. For everybody that's going to pretend like they actually listen to Warren Buffett, I would like for them to just understand very clearly what cash flow means, right? If you are a business that can generate returns like this, 100% earnings return, and I mean, you're doubling your cash flow from operations, then buying back your stock is the best use of capital by a lot. And by the way, just in case, I didn't put the balance sheet on this. In case anybody's like, well, why aren't they buying back their debt? They only have $3 billion in debt, but they have their cash flowing 6 months cash flow was $2 billion. So in about a year and a half, and then most of that cash flow, if you look at, so this is the 6 months ended operating cash flow, $2 billion. 1.5 of that 2 billion was done in the last quarter, and prices are going up, not down, which means that like in 1 year, they could literally pay down all their debt, which is why they're buying back their stock. So this is crazy. Like, I mean, the foolishness may continue in these fertilizer companies, but it is nothing short of foolishness. And it is certainly not being done by fundamental investors. So that kind of is what it is. I just want to make sure that that is crystal clear. But it also bodes very poorly for Europe, because Europe is the one area that both companies and also the energy companies have been very clear on, which is the major issue that everyone's having is getting so the places where you could get phosphate would be Belarus and Russia. but the freight charge just to get it from Russia now to Europe because of the various sanctions, et cetera, and it probably won't let up, still won't allow it to come across. So there was, and then they mentioned that there was some thinking that India would actually get all of their phosphate and potassium from Belarus and Russia, but they didn't get nearly what they needed. And so as a result, Mosaic has had to do things to try to help their Indian clients get the demanded materials for fertilizing the crops. So this is just, I mean, my goodness, it is a crazy situation in fertilizer. I would just stay the course. If the options are making you scared and freaked out because there is so much gamesmanship in this marketplace, just own the stock. You'll be fine. And then finally, I just want to talk on Devon. I haven't listened to the call yet. I listened to FANG's call because I wanted to hear what the fertilizer companies had to say and if there was a difference between nitrogen, phosphate, and potassium. So I will have listened to Devon by tomorrow. But I just want people to understand that the dividend yield was 11% at the close of price on the 29th, which is now finally approximately where the stock is trading because it traded down before it traded up. But realize the close was 63 bucks. Okay. So there is nothing that's yielding more than Devon that is safe, in my opinion. I mean, this actually means that it's yesterday when it traded, or this morning when it traded down below, I think 50 or something like that, when it traded down below 60, I don't know. Anyways, it was trading with a dividend yield that was significantly higher than tips. But the only reason the tips are doing what they're doing is because of energy and food inflation, but mostly energy inflation. So it's kind of beyond ridiculous what's going on in the way of raw materials. I'm not sure who's shorting it at this point. The short interest on all of these things is super high, but it makes no sense because these guys literally are minting money and buying back their stock or alternatively giving it back to shareholders. And so that is, yeah, that's pretty much all I have for today. The other thing I will take a victory lap on is Marriott. Great quarter. And tomorrow Expedia will report, Booking will report tomorrow, Expedia will report, I believe, the following day, and both of them will probably crush it because we are definitely seeing travel continue in Europe. And with that, I will go ahead and stop my share and take questions. Oh my gosh, what a crazy series of earnings. I've never heard anything like it.
I mean, brilliant call on fertilizer, CF and Mosaic. When you're saying 4 times earnings, well, in comparison to the S&P was at 17, it could fairly be 4 times more than it is now, price-wise.
Well, I mean, it's a basic material, so they never trade in line. So like, remember, the S&P is going to be an average. So there's some companies that are even more and then some that'll be less. But right now, it definitely should not be trading at 4 times. So it's safely a double from here, even if on valuation. Now, the thing that's really crazy, especially about Mosaic and especially about Mosaic, right? Because CF still has to create, you're using nat gas, right? But you mine phosphate out of the ground, okay? So like you look at the book value, it's only trading slightly above book, assuming that the book value is not understated, right? Because book value is what you own the thing at, not what you dug it up out of the ground and then sell it at. So if you just wanted a lot of phosphate, you could literally, if you know, at these valuations, you could literally just, if you're a nation that desperately needs phosphate, you could just start buying Mosaic stock at these prices just to ensure a cap on what you're being charged for phosphate. If you wanted to, that would legit be a thing. That's what's that?
Just buy the company First Phosphate.
Just buy the damn company. You only watch my language. I'm sorry. Like, because I'm not convinced that book value, the assets on the book, are actually correctly priced, which has always been my point.
Right. And you know, you make these calls. I mean, this is thorough research you're doing. It's not like you do it, you make a pick daily. You keep doing the numbers. You've been right on oil, the cruise line, fertilizer, It's,
I do
yeah.
the best I can. I do the best I can. Hopefully it
Well,
helps.
it's awesome. It's really
Yeah,
awesome.
I appreciate the compliment.
But you made, I mean, this is really unique. You recommend the CF before earnings, the CF
Yeah,
100 call, and you paid 30 cents for it or something. I mean,
I paid 60, yeah.
and it went up like 400%. But you don't do that every day, but when you do it, it's really, it's something.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even think it's rocket science at all at this point. There's just so few people. I think there's so much day trading going on. There's other stuff that's going on in this market that's creating opportunities on either supply or demand. I'm not sure if someone's blowing up and that's why suddenly the market is undervaluing these things. But right now, it's not, I don't even think it, like none of this valuation work is rocket science. I think one of the biggest disconnects that's happening right now is this idea that a global slowdown will somehow affect every single area of the economy equivalently. So for example, and I understand why people feel that way. I really think it's because people, maybe they're thinking in terms of 2008, or even if you're thinking in terms of 98, 97, it was a global slowdown, but it wasn't really technically negative GDP growth in the United States, which is why I keep saying what I say. You know, and then 2001, these were all periods of investment that went a certain way. But right now, the banks are actually healthy. Is it the best environment to be long banks? No, it is not. But it's not like they did something so crazy that the US is going to have structural problems or mechanistic problems in its markets. That's not true. Possibly overseas, there's some stuff, but I don't even think that's true. Additionally, I think that people believe that the global slowdown is going to result in a lower energy price. But what they seem to be misunderstanding is that it's the energy price that's actually causing the slowdown, not the other way around. So any kind of every single time that the energy price goes down, people are just buying it like crazy, specifically the airlines need it desperately. So, you know, the most of the energy companies are still hedged much higher on where they pre-sold it at by selling, you know, puts or yeah, by you know, because they're net producers, so they can sell puts against it. So, like for example, when I looked at FANG's earnings report, their callers are at 115.60, right? They're similarly, and their cost is much lower than that to actually pull it out of the ground. We know ExxonMobil said that their cost is $44 now. And on Devon, even though I haven't had a chance to listen to the call, in their earnings report, their derivatives are done at 114, 115. So I think there's just a misunderstanding on the equity companies, and then what's actually and the volatility that you're seeing in the commodities market. It's very strange right now. But all that's really going to happen is these companies are going to continue to buy themselves back.
Yeah, and then you listen to all these earnings reports. Earnings create volatility, which creates opportunity and options. So that's
Yeah.
cool. You've been on energy for months, and fertilizer, Mosaic from 37.50. I mean, and it was to 78. So I mean, really good. People should pay attention to what you're doing.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I mean, it's going to be a wild ride. That's why right now, you know, it's like, you know, whereas before the options were easier, I do think that in a lot of cases, especially if folks can't watch it regularly, the stock is just as good because these stocks are really going to move because they are so massively undervalued.
Great. Okay. Thank you, May.
All right. Have a good day, everybody. Good luck in these markets. Take care. Bye.